Next week, when we have our summer garden fest, our featured speaker will be Steve Bieberich, owner of Sunshine Nursery out here in Clinton. So we've come out here today to give you a preview about what Steve is going to be talking about. And Steve is going to be covering the topic of tough plants for Oklahoma. Hey Steve, how you doing?
Glad you guys came out today.
Good to always come out here to Clinton and look at the plants you're growing. You guys grow a lot of tough plants out here, Steve, is that right?
Absolutely. You know, western Oklahoma has some real tough weather conditions, you know, heat and drought and wind and high pH soil. So we've always on the lookout for plants that are tough and can tolerate our growing conditions.
Okay, and you guys, you have woody plants, you have herbaceous plants, quite a selection.
Yeah, we have pretty much a general range of woodies and perennials and some annual plants, and we grow most of our own stock.
Okay, and next week when you're talking to the folks, you're going to cover a little bit of all of these?
Yeah, we're going to talk about just a lot of plants that I feel like they're kind of unusual and interesting, and like to share with the people some new plants.
Okay, new plants that are tough. We love that. This little tree right here, is this one of those tough plants?
Yeah, this is Quercus rugosa. This is a oak that grows in the New Mexico desert, and it's a tremendously nice, it's an evergreen oak until the temperature gets down below zero, and then it will shed its leaves, but it does its growing late in the season. Last year it put on almost 2 foot of new growth, has kind of an olive green leaf with kind of a real neat tomentose back, and I think it's going to be a super nice evergreen oak for Oklahoma.
Okay, about how big does this
It's going to make about a 30-foot round top tree.
Okay.
It's really attractive in the desert.
All right, acorns?
Has small acorns.
Small acorns.
They don't set very often, so it's hard to get acorns to grow from. Although we do have some acorns on it this year, so I'm pretty excited.
All right.
The little acorns might have a new crop.
Well, I like that fuzziness to the leaves.
It hasn't put on its new growth yet. Here in another
Really?
couple of weeks, it'll actually break into new growth, and then it gets real fluffy, and it's really pretty along in July is when it really starts having because that's when they have the monsoon rains, you know, and later in the summer.
Okay, so these are all leaves from last year?
Yes.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
Looks great. Can't beat that for a
It'll
winter
get a lot
display.
fuller since it puts on its new growth.
This shrub down here, this is one that you guys have had a large part in kind of introducing to the nursery industry.
Yeah, this is Salvia greggii pink preference, and this is one that a friend of mine, Logan Calhoun, introduced a number of years ago, and we actually have made it popular. It's just one of the nicest of the Salvia greggii. It has nice foliage and more compact growth, and it's very floriferous. It blooms beautiful in the early spring, and it kind of takes a break during the hot part of the summer, and then starting in along in August, September, October, it really kicks into gear, and it's a super nice fall blooming and early spring blooming salvia.
They don't call them autumn sages for nothing, do they? And this one is a little more cold hardy.
Seems to be more
like
cold hardy, and I think it just has nicer foliage and a denser habit.
Okay, right up here we've got a sort of a small tree.
Well, this is a desert willow. This is a white blooming desert willow. It hasn't quite opened up. It has snow white blooms.
See a few of them on there.
There's a number of different desert willows that are super. We have one called burgundy that has a rich kind of a maroon colored flower. We have one called paradise that has very large pink flowers like the species. And desert willows are super nice summer blooming kind of casual free-form shrub small trees.
Okay. Usually get multi-trunks on those.
Yeah, they're usually multi-trunk, although I have seen them grown as standards, but they kind of want to do their own thing. They're kind of...
I love the foliage, and the flowers are great. And it's summer flowering. I mean, you can't beat summer flowering woody plants, I think. This little shrub is interesting, or large shrub with small leaves. It almost looks like a lead plant or something like that, but I don't think it's a lead plant.
Well, what this is a sumac. This is called little leaf sumac, and it's native of the Texas Panhandle, and it also occurs down in the very southwest part of Oklahoma. And from seeds, you get a lot of variation. This is quite a bit bigger. Sometimes they're much more compact. It's really an interesting, super dry, drought-tolerant plant. It'll have a crop of red berries a lot of years that are really attractive. I've seen it out at the Caprock Canyon State Park in Texas Panhandle, trimmed into hedges. I've seen it used limbed up into trees. I've seen it used as a screen plant. But there's a number of good sumacs of Rhus, and this is just one of the Southwest natives that I think is really fun and gives some interest to your garden.
Okay, and a little bit of fall color on that?
It has some fall color. It'll have some little yellow and red splashes in it, and then when it has a berry crop, this one we trimmed it back hard a couple of years ago and hadn't set fruit since then.
Okay, so good tough shrub with multi uses.
Yep, little leaf sumac.
Okay, well, Steve, I guess there's a couple other trees over here you want to show us?
Yeah, let's walk around at the front.
Well, Steve, here at the end of your parking lot, I see an elm. And which species do we have here?
Well, this is American elm, Ulmus americana, and this is a cultivar named New Harmony that was released from the National Arboretum. And you know, early Americans used lots of American elms, but then after the introduction of the Dutch elm disease, it pretty well wiped out a lot of them. So for a number of years, we haven't used any American elms. But Dr. Denny Townsend with the U.S. National Arboretum has spent his whole career coming up with basically 3 cultivars of American elms that are resistant to the Dutch elm disease. And so we're really excited to be able to offer those cultivars, and this particular one is New Harmony, and so it's Dutch elm disease resistant. And it makes a huge, big shade tree. And maybe it's not a tree that we need to use in every place, but certainly where you want a big shade tree, this is a good, tough, drought-tolerant species that will do well in Oklahoma where a large shade tree is needed. And the other 2 cultivars are Valley Forge and Princeton. So that makes up the 3 cultivars that are really good American elms.
Okay, well that's really good news for people, because for years it seems we would kind of steer people away from the American elms because of the disease problem.
Well, we don't want a monoculture of anything, but now that we have these resistant cultivars, I certainly think that they need to be a part of any landscape where a big tree is needed. Okay,
so we can go back and start planting those American elms again. Good news. This is a beautiful tree here in the center part of the nursery. What do we got there, Steve?
Well, this is a Chinquapin oak, and this is Quercus muehlenbergii. And I wanted to kind of draw attention to this because this is one of our native oaks that's native over a large part of Oklahoma. And it's not very well known. It's not as well known as bur oak or Shumard oak, but Chinquapin occurs in those same forests, and it's a wonderful ornamental. It has real pretty glossy leaves, and it's a super wildlife plant. It's the favorite food in the fall for deer and turkey. The acorns are smaller and much sweeter, and it's really hard to beat the wildlife to the acorns for us to get seed to grow these trees. So I really feel like that Chinquapin oak is a species that we really need to use more of. It's ornamental, it's a good wildlife plant, and it's very tough and tolerant to poor soils and drought and wind. And in the fall, the back of the leaves get kind of a purple color, and the wind blows the leaves and it kind of glitters at you. So it's really an attractive landscape tree too.
I think it's attractive now because it seems like the back of the leaves have a little bit of a silvery white.
In the summer, they're silver.
Yeah. Okay. Very attractive. Very attractive tree. Well, let's take a look at some of the other plants you're going to be talking about next week. Well, Steve, I see several plants in containers here, and these are some of the tough plants that I guess you're going to be talking about next week.
Yeah, we brought a few out to talk about. This is a ball cypress, which isn't all that rare, but the unique thing about this particular strain of ball cypress is we call it the Frio River ball cypress, and it occurs in the western part of the hill country of Texas on high pH soil. And regular ball cypress, occurs in most of the southern states, and out here, the ball cypress from the southeast gets real chlorotic, and so we really can't grow it very well. But this Frio River strain from the hill country, man, it just loves the high pH soil. So it's green and lush, and really, so I really recommend using the West Texas strain of ball cypress. So this is one that the provenance, where the seed comes from, makes them important.
Okay, tolerates that alkaline soil, Frio River ball cypress. Well, Steve, what is it? Is this a small tree or a large shrub we got right here?
Well, I would call it a small tree. These will get around 20 to 25 feet, and this is actually a Sophora.
Okay.
And this is a native to the southern part of Oklahoma along the Red River, and it's called Eve's Necklace, Sophora affinis. And it's really a neat little tree, innately compound leaves, and in the spring early it has little chains of pinkish white blooms, and they're followed by little seed pods that are black, and they're restricted between each seed, so it looks like a little string of black pearls.
Like a necklace.
And this plant is super, where we need a small tree about the size of a red bud, and it doesn't have the problems of having cankers like the Sophora japonica, that's been used in Oklahoma for a long time. And this is pretty much canker-free. It's very drought tolerant. I've had some of these planted in a park where the grass would just completely turn white, and you could stick your hand down in the cracks this far, and these Sophora were black-green and just happy. So it's a very drought-tolerant little tree, ornamental due to the fact of the spring bloom. So I think we should use these more.
And this is a legume?
Yes, it is a legume.
Legume family. Well, this tree has the pinnately compound leaves with several little leaflets. Right down here we've got a plant that has palmately compound leaves, sort of like the palm of your hand with the fingers kind of radiating out from a central point. What plant do we have here, Steve?
Well, this is Texas Buckeye, which is Aesculus arguta variety Buckeye, and it's very drought-tolerant Buckeye. It grows down in Caddo County and southern Canadian counties, and it grows in some super dry, hot conditions. And it makes a small tree, probably 10, 12 feet tall. In the spring, it will bloom with little spikes of kind of creamish yellow flowers.
Okay.
It does have the little Buckeye pod that's kind of ornamental. And when the leaves first unfurl on this plant, it's so luxurious. They're just so soft, and it has such nice limb structure, and it makes a good small specimen plant. It can tolerate some shade, but it'll also do well in full sun.
Okay, well, I just love the foliage. I think it's very attractive.
It's one of our Oklahoma natives that I feel like is really overlooked, and we should use more of.
Okay, good tough plant. Well, right here, Steve, I see you've got some herbaceous plants, some perennials sit out here, some other tough plants for Oklahoma. What have we got here?
Well, these are a couple of native perennials that are native right out to western Oklahoma, and this one with the yellow flowers is called Desert Daisy. It's a Hymenopsis, and it's native here in Custer and Dewey and Roger Mills and Ellis counties. Grows on the kind of the red shaly scree banks, and we've grown this for a number of years, and it's an absolute dependable, drought-tolerant blooming little perennial.
Okay.
It actually will bloom from March all the way until almost Christmas, until it just absolutely goes dormant. And it doesn't have a whole lot of flowers, but if you plant these in a mass, there's enough flowers, and it blooms every day. New floral display opens up. Okay. So it's really a nice plant. It's very drought tolerant. It needs a pretty well-drained soil to survive.
Okay, I love the way the flowers kind of float up above the foliage on those long scapes or flower stalks. And you've got a patch of this out back where you kind of got them massed together and got a good display going back there.
Looks good in a mass planting. Okay, full sun.
And this perennial?
Yes, this is a perennial Solidago Goldenrod, and this is one we call Witchita Mountains. It's Solidago rigida, and it occurs down in the Witchita Mountains, down around Altus and Blair, and it actually, the flowers are a kind of a rod shape instead of being flat like on some of the other goldenrods. So this really is a goldenrod.
Okay, an actual rod.
It's a well-behaved plant, makes a nice clump in full sun. Blooms very dependably, and it was named by Bluebird Nursery. We actually gave this to him. We've had it for, my father-in-law and I collected this probably 30 years ago and have had it around the nursery, and I gave it to Bluebird Nursery and they named it, and now I'm seeing it in catalogs all over the foothills of the Rockies. But we call it Witchita Mountains Goldenrod.
Okay.
Super drought tolerant, easy to grow perennial.
Okay, one of our very own. Well, right down here we've got one more shrub or a small tree to talk about, Steve. This is a very green, glossy leaved plant. What do we got there?
This is a plant that I brought from China. It's called Euonymus chinensis. And I have a tree in my arboretum that's probably about a 4-inch caliper, very tight, upright globe shape with this beautiful glossy green foliage. Makes a real nice little small specimen tree. It has beautiful fire engine red fall color. That's what really makes it super.
It doesn't look like your typical Euonymus. I mean, the leaves are just huge.
Quite a bit larger leaves
it was a Euonymus
than you see in typical Euonymus. The seeds are also very attractive. They're little capsules, probably 3/4 of an inch, that are red and just load up on the tree.
Wow.
It is a deciduous plant, and I don't feel like the deciduous Euonymus have as much problem with Euonymus scale, so that's a plus. But I think this certainly is a plant that we'll name in the future, give it a cultivar name, and I could certainly recommend Euonymus chinensis for small ornamental trees.
Okay, and kind of neat that you brought this plant here to introduce it to us. Another tough plant for Oklahoma.
I've got one of these growing in the arboretum, and it's in an exposed place in poor soil, and Other than we watered it a time or two when it was extremely dry, it's done great. It doesn't seem to be picky or have any problems with growing here.
All right.